Baik, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Sidratil Muntaha and I'm from Pbi B. And now in this video, I'd like to discuss regarding 5 questions about section 2 in discourse analysis. My answer number 1. As prospective teachers, we must study the origins of the development of discourse analysis in order to further motivate us in studying discourse analysis and to be able to find out the aims and effects of the discourse analysis carried out. And my answer number 2, linguistic is the study of language, and knowledge of language requires knowledge of the forms and function of language. Then discourse analysis in charge of studying these two things. In other words, linguistic and discourse analysis have a close relationship because discourse analysis is linguistic study that examines the use of language by natives, both spoken and written, where experts focus on the use of language through linguistic studies, which always experience criticism and unattainable goals, so that discourse analysis is present through its theoretical theories to provide solution in achieving the goals of teaching the use of language. So on the other hand, before studying discourse analysis, there are two conditions, one of which must have linguistic knowledge. My answer number 3. 1. Traditional grammar theory is a theory of grammar studies that is introduced and developed about the structure and form of words and sentence of language without paying attention to the sound and meaning components. Number 3b. The main principle introduced by this theory is the grammatical tradition through a prescriptive view and is only allowed to speak according to the sound pattern, words and sentence structure of the short language, not allowed to use language pattern that do not match the language being referred to. Number 3c. With this principle, language teaching uses a prescriptive approach, namely the language approach used to compile and enforce the rules governing how language is used. D. One of the most powerful works on grammar in the 18th century was Landley Murray's called Murray's English Grammar, which was first published and has continued to evolve into use today, with the visible effect when the rules of grammar were intensive throughout the British and American school system over the years. A. The weakness seen in this theory is the prescriptive approach, because it's considered weak in the successful development of learners' language knowledge and skill. F. Through the concept of grammar theory principles, there is difference from the concept of grammar in modern linguistic studies, where grammar is defined as a study of all interrelated systems available in certain sentence structure, such as sound, word, phrase, sentence, and meaning. However, the teaching of grammar translation is related to traditional grammar, where grammar translation studies language based on traditional grammar theory that focus on linguistic texts. So, my answer number 4. A. The theory of structuralism is an alternative theory of understanding that doesn't agree with the theory of grammar, a theory which focuses on the use of language based on structure. So Ferdinand de Saussure thinks that language is formed by scenes. Scenes have two components, namely the scenes and what means to express what is signified. For example, the perceived sound. So B. There are three main principles in structuralist theory. I think one, but spoken language in the first place and written language second. Two, using a descriptive approach. Three, the means to learn language skills as a whole system. C. The informant method is another name for the audio language method, processed by Bloomfield, a method that uses native speaker of the language as a source of information about phrases, vocabulary, and who provide sentence to imitate. The informant method through the linguistic test is to supervise the learning and teaching process of the basic structure of the target language. D. There are several characteristics of structuralist method in the form of A. Language is what native speakers say, not what one thinks one should say. B. Drilling is the main activity in the classroom. C. Learning a foreign language begins with imitating, repeating the use of language components until students feel natural to express a foreign language. D. The teacher must direct the student to practice the same sentence over and over again. A. The teacher's language is a model for students to imitate. F. Communication skills will be acquired after going through a long, tedious and repetitive process and rigorous practice. Next, according to my understanding, there are two definitions seen in structuralist theory. 1. This method does not place too much emphasis on the teaching of culture in language teaching. 2. The psychological stress of students from the impact of extensive error analysis. Next, error analysis is an analysis conducted by a teacher to prevent students from making mistakes while speaking. Whenever an error is found, the teacher must immediately correct it to avoid frequent mistakes. So, the relationship with this theory is that students are expected to be able to speak a foreign language in accordance with the correct language structure. They must speaking using the correct language pattern. To realize this learning, it is monitored with error analysis. So my answer number 5, A. The theory of functionalism is an alternative theory of criticism and rejection of a well-known linguist, Chomsky, of structuralist language theory and grammar. So, Chomsky claims that sentences in human language are not learned by imitation and repetition, but are generated from the learner's underlying competence. Next, B. Chomsky's view on speakers use abstract abilities or knowledge to match sounds and meanings that enable them to use and understand a language. However, Delheim rejects Chomsky's view of linguistic theory. He further argues that linguistic theory needs to be seen as part of a more general theory combining communication and culture. C. The theory of functionalism, known as the language study approach, is concerned with studying the function performed by the use of language. The main principles of this theory or this functionalism theory has encouraged many researchers to examine its aspect of language function beside the form of language. Next, CLT is a language teaching methodology from the results of teacher rethinking and design related to teaching, syllabus, and class materials. This is based on a communicative approach. The emergence of the communicative approach theory in consider as language approach as the basis of functional theory. Next, the theory of functionalism, known as the language study approach, is concerned with studying the function performed by the use of language. By identifying the intent and purpose of language discourse, they identify the language function of the sentence used by native speaker in their social interaction, the need for the form and function of information, social and culture in language learning has provided the background for discourse research as a pioneer in the emergence of discourse analysis as a discipline used to describe language in context. So maybe that's all. Maybe that's all my answer. The two regarding five question. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.